Welcome to our fifth tutorial in this second module on data manipulation and navigation. In this lesson, we're going to go through how you enter formulas, text, and numbers in Excel. Now, the good news before we even get started is that entering text and numbers is fairly simple, and there isn't even that much to say about it necessarily. I'm just including it because in this lesson I want to distinguish between how you enter formulas and some of the additional things you need to do there versus how you enter text and numbers, which we've actually already been over in some of the previous lessons here. So let's start with the text and numbers side. If you're just entering text in Excel, it's pretty simple. You just go to the cell and you start typing in the text. And there really isn't much more to it than that. Now there may be formatting, so you may have to go to Alt H Home, and you can see all the options here for changing around the font face, the font size, the color, borders, alignment, and so on and so forth. We're going to get to all those in more detail in the formatting module coming up right after this one, but in general, you're not changing around a whole lot when it comes to entering text within Excel in individual cells like this. One thing that you do often do that does not require going to Alt H Home and then going to this ribbon and changing around anything is you change around the indentation of the text. For a good example of that, let's go to the Walmart file here. So in this file, in addition to the many other problems, one of the issues with the readability is that it's very difficult to read all these different line items when they're all in the exact same left alignment here. So one thing that we often like to do is indent the text. Now you could go into the formatting menu or go around to the settings in the ribbon here to try to do this, but a faster and easier way to do it is to simply press Alt H6 on the PC in new versions of Excel. Unfortunately, this is one shortcut that differs across different versions of Excel and also on the Mac. So let's scroll over here to see what I mean. If you're still somehow using Excel 2003 or even versions below that, this is going to be Control Alt Tab and then Control Shift Alt Tab to decrease the indentation, whereas in newer versions it's Alt H6 to increase the indent. Now, on the Mac, there is no built-in assigned shortcut key, so you have to go to the Format menu, which is Command plus 1, so the Command key and then 1, and then go to Alignment here and change this around and say left indent or right indent depending on how you want it aligned. Now, this formatting menu, we're going to get to this in a lot more detail in the formatting module as you'd expect, so I'm not really going to cover it now, but this is just for your own information in case you're trying to replicate this formatting procedure and this indentation procedure on the Mac. So you have to go here and then you have to manually change around the indent to whatever you want it to. I set it to 5 there, which is probably too big, but that is basically what you have to do there. You could do this on the PC as well, but I don't recommend it because you can just press Alt H6 or Control Alt Tab depending on the version of Excel. So that is one useful thing you can do with text that doesn't require going to any complicated menus if you're using the PC versions of Excel. Now let's go back to the other file quickly. So we've been over entering text and some of what you do there. Now entering numbers, pretty much the same thing. It's nothing too complicated. You start typing the number. You don't even need to press F2 to enter the cell or anything like that, though you can. You really just start typing the number that you want. Now, again, you could go in and you could try to format this differently, but we're not really dealing with formatting right now. We're just entering numbers. So if I enter 2, 24, 12, 13, that's really all there is to it. If you want to get to changing around the decimal places or changing around the colors and so on, again, that's all covered in the formatting module coming up. So really the main point here, the two main points of this lesson are how to enter formulas and manipulate them, and then how to use the paste special commands in Excel, because these are going to prove very, very, very useful. So let's start with formulas first. Now, in this customer due diligence data file, there isn't too much in the way of formulas, and there isn't too much to say about it here because of the way I've set it up. So what I'm going to do instead is mostly demonstrate this in the Walmart data file. So how do you enter formulas? Well, let's take as an example this gross profit line right here. Now, what if I wanted to add the gross margin right below it? Well, I start typing the text, gross margin, and then to enter the formula, you do not have to press F2. You can just press equals. That works across all versions of Excel on the PC and Mac. So just press equals and then take gross profit, go up there by using the arrow key in Excel. You do not need to change anything. Literally, as soon as you press the equals key and then you press the arrow key up, that is all you do. You have that, and then you can press the divide key, which will be right on the question mark key on your keyboard, and then divide, once again going up by using the arrow key, by revenue up here at the top. So you can see the formatting here for the gross margin is completely off, and we'll go in and fix that in a little bit. But that is basically how you enter formulas. Now you can see if you go up to the formulas tab up here that there are a bunch of built-in formulas. We have auto sum, average, count numbers, max, min. We have a bunch of logical functions. We have a bunch of built-in functions dealing with text. We have date and time functions. We have lookup functions. We have math and even trigonometry functions here. So Excel has a lot of built-in functions, and we're going to get into these in more detail in the formulas module. But for now, this is just sort of an introduction to the topic. Now, what if you want to take this formula and now you want to copy this over and have the gross margin for every single year here? Well, one way to do it is to press the equal sign and then go up using the arrow key, gross profit, the divide by sign, and then revenue. And we could just keep doing that all the way across, but a more intelligent way to do it would be to press the Control C key to copy, and then the Control V key. We're going to press Shift, hold down Shift, and then use the right arrow key, and then we can press Control V to copy over all these formulas. And you can press F2 to go inside and check all of them. Now another variation, I'm going to press Shift Control right arrow key to highlight all these and then press Delete. Another few variations, another few ways to copy and paste these formulas. So number one, instead of just copying and pasting it as is, you can press Control C to copy. And then you can go to the Paste Special menu and choose to only copy formulas, formatting, text, and all sorts of other options. There are a couple ways of getting here. Now I'm going to go over to the side and show you these shortcuts. So Paste Special. Again, it differs across versions of Excel. You can press Control-Alt-V in new versions of Excel or newer versions. In old versions, 2003, it's Alt-ES. And then, of course, the Mac is different as well. There, it's Command-Control-V to get to the Paste Special menu. So you have to sort of look at what version of Excel you're using and whether you're using a PC or Mac for this. But bottom line, I'm using a newer version of Excel, so I can press Control-Alt-V, and there you can see the options. I can paste just the formula, I can paste the value, or I can paste the format, which is T. So if I press F, I go back to formula. If I press V, I go to values. If I press T, that pastes the formats. And you can see some of the other options here. These are not quite as commonly used, but they can still be helpful. Now you could also access this through the home menu by pressing Alt-H and then V for paste, and then you can see all the options down here. Most of these are fairly similar. There may be a few differences versus the menu I just showed you. Now, my personal opinion is that in this case, I find the Control-Alt-V shortcut very awkward to use in newer versions of Excel. So I actually prefer to use the older shortcut key, which is Alt-ES and then T for formats, V for values, and then F for formulas. So I actually prefer to use this, even though it is an old shortcut, because I find Alt-ES much faster to type versus Control-Alt-V, simply because of where the Control, Alt, and V keys are placed in most keyboards. You sort of have to bend your index finger over to actually hit the V key at the end. So throughout this course, I'm mostly going to be focused on these shortcuts for pasting special, but there are certainly other options. And of course, once again, if you're on the Mac, you'll have to learn the alternate shortcuts for those by using Control-Command-V instead. So let's finish pasting this formula across. What I can do is press Shift, the right arrow key, and then I can press Alt-ES-F for paste formulas, or Control-Alt-VF, depending on which version of Excel you're using and your preference. Paste the formulas right there. Now, of course, we have another problem here, which is that the formatting is completely off. Now, this is not the formatting lesson or the formatting module quite yet, but what I do want to show you how to do is how to use the paste special command here to fix this and to make it look more like what we have right up here for revenue growth. So what I'm going to do is take revenue growth, this whole line. I'm going to press Shift Control, right arrow key to highlight this whole area. Press Control C or Command C on the Mac, and then we'll go down to gross margin. And what I can do here is I could just highlight the whole thing with Shift Control right arrow key a few times, but I actually don't need to do that in this case because we are copying and pasting over the same area. So I can actually just press Alt EST for the formats, or Control Alt VT, or Control Command V T to make things even more confusing on the Mac. But in any case, go to Paste Special and Paste Formats and press Enter. And now we can see that this is now correctly formatted. Press F2 to go through and look at all your formulas right here. And that is how you can manipulate formulas and work with some of the formatting here as well. Now, a few other things to point out about the Paste Special menu. If you press Control Alt V or Alt ES, this is only going to show up with something if you actually have something in the clipboard. So let's say that I have just copied something and pasted it. Well, if I press Alt ES, nothing's going to pop up right now because nothing is in my clipboard. I haven't copied anything. I just copied something and pasted it. So you must have copied something previously for Alt ES or Control Alt V to work properly. Otherwise, nothing's going to show up and you're not going to get a dialog box in Excel. The same applies, of course, on the Mac version, although the keyboard shortcuts are different. So that's how you can manipulate formulas and the formatting here a little bit. A few other quick things to show you before we jump into the exercise. One other very useful shortcut key in Excel, go over here to my shortcut list again, is the Control plus tilde sign, or whatever it's called, right next to the 1 key on the keyboard. This goes to show all formulas, and then the F9 key, which helps you evaluate part of a formula. Now, F9 can be used in many other ways in Excel, so this one only applies if you're actually active within a cell and editing it. So let's look at the Control and tilde key first and see what that does. I'm going to press it right now, and you can see basically it is showing us what all these formulas are. Now, you don't normally want to have Excel exactly in this mode because it makes it very difficult to actually see what's going on, but it can be very useful for debugging things and seeing if one formula is inconsistent, for example. So that's a useful shortcut key to keep in mind. I'm going to zoom in again, and don't worry, we'll get to how to zoom in and out. I'm actually just using Control and then the mouse scroll wheel to do that. One other useful feature is if you press F9, you can actually evaluate part of a formula within a cell. So let me demonstrate this. If we go over to revenue growth here, if I press F2 to edit it, and then I highlight F23 with Shift and then the left arrow key, if I press F9 here, it will actually show me this number, the 446,950. Unfortunately, I cannot actually show you that because it interferes. Pressing F9 interferes with the default key on my screen recording software, so that's not going to work, but you can try it for yourself. Not terribly useful most of the time, but if you're debugging a very long and complicated formula, the F9 key when you're inside and editing in a cell in formula mode like this can be very helpful. And then one final thing before we jump into the exercise. So here we've been assuming that we're just entering the formulas because we want Excel to evaluate them properly. Well, another thing we could do is if I just go inside the cell, if I press F2, Shift Control to copy the whole thing, I press Control C or Command C on the Mac to copy, and then I can go up here. I'm going to go to cell G22, I'll press F2, press Control V or Command V to copy, and then if I put a quote in front of this, let me get rid of the equal sign there. If I put a quote in front of it, then Excel simply displays the formula rather than evaluating it. So again, not something you're going to use all the time, but this can be useful if you're trying to track down problems in your formula or figure out what's going wrong. So again, not super critical features, but just useful things to know and things that'll come in handy as you begin using Excel more seriously and entering more complex formulas in your spreadsheets. And then the last thing I want to point out here, for real this time before we actually move into the exercise, is that when I copied and pasted the gross margin formula here, I had my calculations in Excel set to automatic. So if I go to Alt-TO or Command comma key on the Mac, and I go down to advanced, or actually formulas, in Excel 2003 this will be under calculations, and on the Mac it should also be under formulas. I have workbook calculations here set to automatic except data tables, which means that when I copy over a formula like the gross margin one, well, these get recalculated automatically. Now, if I did not have that enabled, then watch what would happen. Let's say I disabled this temporarily. Let's say I set it to manual, and then I just copied this over with Control C, Shift arrow key, and then Control V. You can see how it's not calculating correctly. And this is an issue. We'll be addressing this in the next few lessons and show you some of the different options here. But long story short, you pretty much always want to have your calculation set to automatic or automatic except for data tables. So I'm going to set it back to that, and we can see the difference that this time around it's correctly calculating it based on these new numbers. So you pretty much always want to have it set to that. So going back to our other worksheet, we're actually not going to be completing really any exercises there in this worksheet. So there isn't too much to say about this one. Our exercise is going to take place in this Walmart model. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to change this around so that the indentation is proper for the cost of revenue as a percent of revenue line, and so that the formatting there is also correct. We already entered the gross margin line right here, but I want you to fix the indentation for the rest of these lines. And then at the very bottom, I want you to enter the EBITDA margin here, and then the EBIT margin right below it right here. And then, of course, enter the actual formulas for these. For the EBITDA margin, take this number and divide by the revenue here at the top, copy it across. And in general, just try to make the formatting consistent with the indentations that we see down here. So make it easier to read, use your judgment, and fix the indentation using the shortcut keys that we just learned. So pause this video yourself right now, give it a try, and then come back after a few seconds and see what the correct answer is. Okay, good. So here's what I recommend doing for fixing the formatting here. First off, for cost of revenue as a percent of revenue, we want to indent this. So I'm going to press Alt H6 or Control Alt Tab in older versions of Excel. On the Mac, you have to go to Command 1 and alignment to do this and change the indent to 1 right here. Now to fix the actual formatting of this, I'm going to press Control C on the revenue growth above and then Alt EST or use the alternate shortcuts. I just prefer this one. On the Mac, of course, it's also different. We have that in place. So we have that. Now the indentation on the rest of this, most of this looks good at the top, so I'm not going to change this around. Sales, general, administrative expenses. Again, this also looks fine. It's fine to have this all the way on the left side. Percent revenue, I'm going to change the indentation with Alt H6 there, or Control Alt Tab or Command 1, go to alignment on the Mac. Now, operating income, this is fine as is. Pre-tax income, also fine. But some of these other things in between I'm going to change. So investment income and interest income, I'll press Shift, press the down arrow key, Alt H6, Control Alt Tab, or Command 1 and alignment. Same thing goes for provision for income taxes and income taxes as a percent of pre-tax income. Also here we can press F4 or the Command Y key on the Mac, and both of those change. F4 can be a real time-saving shortcut with this type of task with fixing the indentation. I can do the same thing and press F4 here and indent the less non-controlling interest earnings. These other line items, I'm going to keep them as is and not indent anything there because it's not really necessary. And then finally, the last part of this exercise, EBITDA and EBIT. So what I'm going to do here is enter EBITDA margin and then EBIT margin down here. And then to enter the actual formulas, I'm going to go over here with the arrow keys, press the equal sign, take EBITDA, and then divide. I can move up with Control up arrow, go all the way up to revenue here, and then press enter. And then for the EBIT margin, same idea, take this number, press the equal sign, and then press the divide by key, Control up arrow, and then go to revenue over here, divide by that, and press enter. So we have that. Now to copy these formulas over, there are a couple options. Really in this case it almost doesn't even matter because we're going to fix the formatting anyway, but one simple way to do it is just Control C, and then Shift right arrow key, and then Control V to paste this formula. And then same idea with the EBIT formula. Control C, Shift right arrow key, and then Control V. Again, on the Mac, you substitute in Command for the control keys there. And then finally, to fix the formatting, what we can do is just go up to where we have the gross margin right here. I can press Shift, Control, right arrow key twice, Control C or Command C on the Mac. And then we use the Control and arrow keys to move all the way down. And then I can use Alt EST or Control Alt VT, or on the Mac it's Command Control VT to paste formats. And then I can go down to the other one and actually just press F4 right there. Or on the Mac you can press Command Y, and then that fixes the formatting here at the bottom. So obviously we still have a lot of formatting issues within our income statement for Walmart right here, but this goes a long way toward fixing many of these issues and making it at least a little bit more readable overall. So that's it for our exercise and for this lesson on how to enter formulas, text, and numbers within Excel. In short, here are the key keys to remember: the equal sign for entering formulas, F9 and the control tilde key for evaluating and showing formulas. Paste special is really the main point of this lesson though. Alt ES or Control Alt V or Command Control V on the Mac. Then also on the Mac, remember that you have to press the Command key T, Command key V, Command key F for pasting in formats, values, or formulas. And then also I showed you how to increase or decrease the indent. This one not quite as common, but can still be useful, as was certainly the case right here in this example. So that's it for the lesson. Coming up next, we're going to be delving into one of the other topics I mentioned, which is how to set your calculations properly to manual or automatic, and then we'll be getting into some more useful features with formulas such as absolute and relative references, anchoring cells, and naming and jumping to cells.